Hi! Today, we're going to be optimizing Minecraft on this older 17-inch laptop. We're going to try different performance mods and operating systems. These are the specs of the machine. Comes with a Intel Core i7 6700HQ processor, an NVIDIA GTX 950M GPU, 16GB of DDR3L 1600 megatransfers per second dual channel memory, and a SATA SSD. This sadly does not support NVMe. The operating systems we're going to be trying out and comparing are Windows 10 IoT LTSC 2021 with the NVIDIA 580 driver. On the Linux side, we're going to be using my favorite Void Linux with the default kernel 6.12 and NVIDIA 570 driver. Yes, Windows uses a newer driver. However, these were the defaults offered by both operating systems, and this GPU is so old that I believe that there are no real performance benefits. Now, I did also turn off Spectre and Meltdown for both operating systems. I recommend a little util called Inspector. It runs on Windows as well as Wine. This disables a pretty taxing security feature of these Intel CPUs. However, since I'm not doing anything cybersecurity related on this laptop, I'm simply gaming and every FPS counts, I decided to disable it. In Windows, you can use the Inspector program. On Linux, you have to set mitigations equals off in a kernel boot parameter. I also set the power profile slider to performance. When it comes to key Minecraft graphics settings, I set it to the fancy graphics, a render distance and simulation distance of 10, the maximum frame rate set to unlimited, smooth lighting turned on, particles set to all, entity distance set to 100%, and clouds turned off as a personal preference. These settings are copied to every test so that we do not unfairly represent a mod or an operating system. The mods we are going to be trying today is first off Sodium, the most popular mod to date. With Sodium, I have also a few extra mods listed here. Another one is Vulkan mod. This replaces the older OpenGL that is used in Minecraft with Vulkan. GPU Booster mod. It's a mod I found when I was looking for the Vulkan mod on Prism Launcher, and saw it was interesting. And also we'll be mixing them together. However, Vulkan and Sodium are not compatible, since Sodium aims to optimize the existing OpenGL code. When it comes to Minecraft, I'll be testing 3 different benchmark scenarios. 1 being a void world. The void world has nothing in sight. It is set to peaceful, and there is one singular acacia block set in the middle of nothing. This benchmark aims to stress the GPU. Next off, we also have a village. This is supposed to represent a more casual experience, where someone has built a significantly large village with approximately 40 villagers, and a bunch of cows and sheep and stuff. The village world is aimed to test a compromise between CPU and GPU, and often is more CPU intensive though. Next off is the benchmark world. This is a more popular one, I'd say, and is very intensive on everything. Mostly the CPU though. Now, let's see how everything did in the benchmarks. First off, Linux versus Windows. Here we can see Linux just flat out wins in vanilla, and is especially noticeable in the village world averages. Next off, GPU Booster. GPU Booster doesn't really do much, and the results seem more akin to a margin of error than anything else. Sodium, however, evens the playing field a bit better. Here we can see that in the 1% minimums, Windows and Linux are neck and neck, However, a trend still continues. Linux is indeed faster than Windows. Now, combining Sodium and GPU Booster does actually boost a bit, especially on the Linux side. And Windows sees a slight boost as well, I guess, but still, Linux wins. Blasphemy. Windows is actually faster than Linux when it comes to the Vulkan mod. And we can see here 510 FPS, which is so far the new record in the Void average. However, it is interesting to see that in the 1% minimums, Linux still wins. But it's just the averages that are higher on Windows. And adding GPU Booster actually really helped the Windows in the Void world. We can see here a high of 530 FPS, which is indeed the highest we got in all the numbers. But we can also see the continuation of the trend that Linux is just faster in the 1% minimums. Now let's compare mods. First off, on Windows. Oof, that's an ugly graph. Let's break it down. Void World. Here we can see that just Vulkan mod wins when it comes to the averages. However, Sodium, pure Sodium, actually wins when it comes to the minimums. And Vulkan plus GPU Booster actually has the lowest 1% minimums. So yeah, you'll have more frames, but it'll be more jittery. Now in the Village world, we can actually see that Sodium and GPU Booster is best in every scenario. And in fact, pure Vulkan has the worst score, even worse than vanilla. And in the benchmark world, we can see that indeed, Sodium plus GPU Booster wins out again. This time, vanilla is indeed trailing behind everything else, as expected. Next off, Linux. Here, in the Void world, we can see that GPU Booster wins in the averages. Interesting, though, is that Sodium is actually faster than Sodium and GPU Booster. In fact, Sodium and GPU Booster is even slower than vanilla. So GPU Booster on Linux can actually harm performance. And in the Village world, we can see, as expected, Sodium and GPU Booster simply run the best. But Sodium is trailing right behind, so it's not that bad. And indeed, vanilla is slow as hell. And in the benchmark world, we can see that in the averages, Sodium and GPU Booster win. But interesting is that the 1% minimums go to Sodium again. So yeah, GPU Booster can sometimes hinder performance. So, who wins? Let's compare the best of the best. Here, when I count all the wins, Sodium and GPU Booster got the most amount of wins, both on Windows and on Linux. If you want a good mod, a good performance mod for this configuration, Sodium GPU Booster are just all around the best. But sometimes turning off GPU Booster and simply relying on Sodium can be faster on Linux. But also, Vulkan on Windows can be faster than any other options. What are my recommendations? Well, first off, the best combo is indeed Sodium and GPU Booster, and the best OS for this combo is indeed Linux. However, if you're using Microsoft Windows, the Vulkan mod is oftentimes more powerful than on Linux, it's weird to me because there's so much praise in the Linux community for Vulkan, DXVK, and how great that is. But it just goes to show, NVIDIA has better optimized drivers on Windows than on Linux. And there are things I'd like to explore in the future, like turning on and off Spectre. I just disable it for anything older than like 8th gen or 9th gen Intel, and Ryzen I don't even do that, because that's what I've been told by the community, but I don't have any numbers to prove it. Also, I'd like to try out Windows 11. However, my install of Windows 11 was just so slow, like the numbers just did not make any sense. Not to mention the fact that updates were just horrendous, so I just no. It was faster to install Windows 10 LTSC than to try to fix my Windows install. And also, I'd like to explore like more mods, right? Like Vulkan mod is interesting, but there are probably more mods, like Immediately Fast rings a bell. I'd like to give some credits to the software I used. Mangohood for Linux benchmarks, MSI Afterburner for Windows benchmarks, although I do not like the Norton install thing. You have to uncheck install Norton during install, which is just, whatever. It's annoying, but I guess I'll live with it. Shotcut Video Editor, it's what I'm using to edit this video. OnlyOffice Desktop Editors, it's what I use to generate all these numbers and all in this presentation. KD Plasma, I love the DE, it's awesome. And Void Linux. And if you're interested in something more to watch, definitely recommend Tech Yes City for Windows LTSC and IoT benchmarks, Lifting Linux for awesome Linux benchmarks, Budget Builds Official for having an interesting story with every piece of hardware he gets, and I just love to watch his videos, what can I say? Anyway, that's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and bye.